Hello and welcome back in my reading corner for another wrap up. The reading month of February is over and I get to tell you how I did. I'm actually quite happy with how I did, even though in the end I was like, oh, I need to do like just one more. And then today I was just like, no, I'm not going to read another 300 pages today. I'm not just going to put that pressure on me. I will finish up my editing stuff and then just start fresh into the month of March. Looking at that, I read a total of 9 books in February. I did pretty good. It's 9 out of 17, which is 52% of my TBR. I am getting there. Remember, my goal is to stick to at least getting 50% of my monthly TBR done, because I have always these overambitious TBRs and I need to get a little bit more realistic. So 52%. Whoop, whoop. In January it was only 40, so way better. I read 3,784 out of 6,999 pages, which is 54% of my TBR compared to 42% in January. And that does not factor in that I started reading The Gilded Wolves and I didn't finish it. I'm hoping to finish it at some time in the future. And I read I pretty much read exactly 310 pages in Kingdom of Ash, and I will be continuing to progress slowly into that book because I want to just enjoy as long as it lasts. So I want to progress, but I don't want to rush. So the total pages of January do not factor these books in, even though they kind of should. But so it's even better than 54%. I'm quite happy with that result. I bought a total of 1 book for the February TBR. This is probably a first that I only bought 1 single book for my monthly TBR, and I actually read it, so I'm quite proud of that too. I read a total of 4 hardcovers, 3 paperbacks. I listened to 0 audiobooks exclusively. I had 2 audiobooks where I listened to in between bits. Like most books that I had this month, I had the version on script or scribed, however you want to pronounce it. So whenever I was going out, for example, for a hike, or I was driving, I just popped in the audiobook and continued, but then I would go back to the real book and continue reading it. So it wasn't like no book was solely audiobook, and 2 were ebooks. Sadly, those were kind of the worst as well, I think. So I have a total of 2 5 stars, 3 4 stars, 1 3 star, and 3 2 stars. Overall, I'm quite satisfied with the books that I read. Probably the longest and the shortest were the suckiest ones, but honestly, I had so much fun reading the sucky long book. It was a buddy read with Elisa, and I loved ranting with her about how bad this book is. So yeah, that was kind of fun too. So no hard feelings there. Overall, I'm quite satisfied with my reading months. 9 books is good, especially for February. And I had a couple of 4 and 5 stars. I had some surprises, and I think I found my new love in one of the books. So I'm very pleased. All right, so without further ado, here is my wrap up with mixture of review type. So this is kind of, usually it can get quite long, but if you are not interested in a book, you can easily skip, because this is like a vlog type wrap up, and you can see me change locations when I start talking about a different book. So yeah, have fun with listening to my thoughts about the books that I read. Is it 2 stars? Is it 3 stars? I think it's rather 2 stars. I feel so sorry for this rating, because I wish I could give it more, but I just didn't feel it. This book literally promises part Wonder Woman, part Vikings. and all heart. But I think it was neither one of these. It was more like a hate to love romance and a woman that is fighting for her life, but she's not badass at all. And I think that's about it. I have nothing against our main character really, but I just couldn't get a connection to her. I couldn't get a connection to any of the characters. The storyline felt a little bland and rushed at the same time. Nothing really was gripping my attention in any way. And then there were just a few things that kept raising questions, like we have these like enemy tribes and they're fighting every 5 years. Why every 5 years, you ask? There's no answer. They're enemies and they're fighting every 5 years. They meet on the battlefield every 5 years, fight, go back, and then meet again. If you are enemies and you go back and forth because you want revenge, I totally get it. But this, it's like, I don't get it. And I feel like with this like blurb in the beginning, you already have 80% of the story and there's really not much filling in between. I don't understand why his brother was saved. There's no reason for it. There's no reasoning really. I do understand that she was shocked when she saw her brother and that she couldn't fight in the same way. But I don't know, it's like there was just something missing. I read like the second half so quickly, but I still didn't miss anything. So I was on the verge of like speed reading because it was so boring in a way. And I was like, this just so annoying, boring trope of, oh, we are enemies and we have to get together to fight this other evil and yay! That was just missing. Like this something was missing. So overall, if you like this type of trope, it's not that badly written book. So it might, I do understand that some people like it, but it was just not for me at all. So it seems like my clip for das Hexeninternat just got lost. I probably deleted it accidentally, but there's not much to talk about anyways. I did like the first one, and this is like a cute story from a German author about this girl who realizes that she's a witch. And she's kind of going then, she's starting to go on this school, especially for like where you have like these gifted kids, and learns about her powers. The way I'm explaining it, it sounds a lot like a Harry Potter knockoff, but it's not at all. It feels completely different. And well, I did totally enjoy the first book. It was cute, it was fluffy, it had some tension, it had some fun ideas, so I totally liked it. So I wanted to read the second one as well, but the second one just completely failed me. It was, the plot just felt rushed, and the writing style, oh my gosh, the writing style was so... I don't have words for it. It just felt like a kid was writing it, and I could not, like, I don't know how I got through it. Probably just because it had so little pages, because no way. So even if you liked the first one, I do not recommend picking up the second one. That is just, it's just a whole mess.
Oh, good morning. I finished Krone der Dunkelheit last night, and I have to say, like, I could not tape my thoughts like right after reading it. There's so much wrong with this book. So this is a book by a German author for the obviously for the German community, and I don't think it has been translated. I hope it won't be. There's so many issues with this book. So first off, the idea is really, really great, and we have a really huge, like, fantastic, epic world, and we're following two girls. One is a princess, and she is searching for her lost brother, and the other is a simple woman, you could say, who has lost her parents in an attack and now wants to become part of this mystical, magical protector's guard type of thing, which traditionally is only given to men. So it has, the country is divided. The north is like humans and the south is like fae, and they're divided by a wall, and these protectors, guardians, are protecting the wall because these creatures that live in the fae country, in the magical country, come over and attack villages and stuff. And that's how this girl's parents died. So overall, it's a very typical YA trope, so it's all good. But now the thing is, it feels, when you're starting to read it, it feels like this whole book is kind of like, it's, you could say inspired. I would say like this is more than inspiration. It feels like it copies and combines a few main books. We have A Court of Thorns and Roses, which is totally copied in the country setting, etc. And this one girl, who by the way is called Freya, and she wants to break into this magical country to find her brother, and she hires a protector, to like this big bulky dreamy guy to protect her. The other girl is totally the other part is a kind of Throne of Glass, but in a bad way. We have a very snobby, snooty human girl who thinks she's the best and who wants to become this guardian, and she is so condescending, she is so bitchy. It's so annoying to read about her. Now, if the author would have done like a good character building trope where we see some development, but it reads so annoying the whole time and it doesn't change. She stays that way, and it feels like the author wanted this to be the character, but there's no character. It's just annoying, childish, and yeah, she acts like a child. Now, the third book thrown in there is totally Game of Thrones. The whole wall concept and the protectors of the wall, it totally sounds and feels like the Night Watch. Also, you could tell that the author is usually a new adult author who writes steamy books, because she is bringing completely unnecessary and graphic sex scenes in there that are kind of, I don't want to say revolting. It's like, no, I don't mind graphic scenes, and I am far from prude, but this was just, it felt so unnecessary. In a situation where like you see some like dominance and subordination, and this queen just says, take out your dick, and you know what I want from you now, and he doesn't want to, but he pleasures himself in front of her. It just, the way it's written, it just feels unnecessary, and it's just too much for me because it feels so unnecessary and over the top, to like, I don't know what she's trying to reach there, but I always felt like I was slipping into this graphic erotic novel, and that's not what I signed up for. I don't like erotic novels at all, and I totally get that there's a place for them, but don't let it be a YA fantasy novel without like telling me that this is going to be an erotic novel. Every single chapter there was something wrong. Every single chapter there was something where I was like, oh my god, no, just no. It doesn't make sense. There's plot holes, there's very, very and it's not sloppy writing, it's very like bulky writing, and you could do with less question marks. Like, we experience something in a chapter, and we as a reader are thinking like there's several things that we're thinking at the end of the chapter, because some new things turned up, and I'm already wondering all these things, and then the author then just presses them, like rubs them in my face, by asking all these questions at the end of the chapter. Like, there's literally like a paragraph just with questions like, how can this be? I wonder if that was so-and-so. Could this be so-and-so? Like, it's very hard to explain without spoiling, but no. So, yeah, and oh, by the way, the cover has nothing to do with the book. It has nothing to do with the title. The title translated means Crown of Darkness, and this is pretty much inspired by the Everless cover. And there's no, I don't understand it. Like, I don't understand the cover after reading it. After like, let's say 70%, I just stopped caring. The plot twists just were roll eyes for me, and it just felt so forced and constructed in a way that I could not enjoy the reading at all. There were a few nice bits in there, and overall I do think she created a nice world. And if you haven't read A Court of Thorns and Roses and Thrones of Glass, and you are a German reader who is like 13, 14, this might be a really good start into the fantasy world, because this is a very good entrance when you haven't read it all. But if you have read Court of Thorns and Roses, Thrones of Glass, Game of Thrones, you will just see all these parallels, and it just, I couldn't. Because there's some nice basic there, I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. So I finished Rivers of London, and I have to say it is a really fun writing style. It feels refreshing, but this story was so, in a way, all over the place that I just did not really start to, like, it didn't catch my interest really as much as it should, and I just couldn't start caring for the characters. We're following this guy who wants to be like a constable in London. He wants to be like he wants to do police work, and then he realizes that he can see dead people. Well, he doesn't realize it, it just happens, and then he's taken under its wing by this guy into, like, it has sort of this boy finds out he's magical and gets a mentor and learns the magic world kind of trope, which is nice. The only things that I really did enjoy in this book were the scenes when he was practicing magic and he was getting into this world and how it worked and how the magic system worked. And that was amazing. I loved that. But everything else, it was just, then there's vampires, then there's a river god, and then there's like, they're fighting. All the while, it's written in a very, very funny way. So if you are for a funny writing style, this might be for you. But for me, it was just too all over the place to really, really enjoy it. So I really wanted to enjoy it, but it just dragged. It just dragged for me because I didn't know what was going on and I lost interest in the characters. Sorry. My Plain Jane. This is not only for people who love classics. I'm not into classics that much and I still liked it very much so. Excuse my static hair. I'm trying to tame it a little bit. It's just everywhere. So My Plain Jane is a sort of retelling of Jane Eyre, and but it's very, like, it has a completely different angle. We are following 2 girls. We're following Jane Eyre and we're following the author of Jane Eyre, and they are in a ghost story sort of. So Jane can see the dead and she can communicate to them, and this agency society wants to recruit her to become part of them because they need people who can see ghosts. And we're also following Charlotte, who is the author of Jane Eyre, and she plays a part in this whole story, and we're pretty much following Charlotte as she writes the story of Jane Eyre. So she's basing the story of Jane Eyre to the things that are happening in reality, and she then just
decides to write it a little bit differently in a few ways. For example, she decides not to write about the ghosts, etc. But you will kind of see the story Jane Eyre that you know from the classic, but in such a different way. It is really fun. In the beginning, I also really did like the writing style that is very fresh, very young and unique, and that is very present to our time. So it's kind of, in some situations, it's addressing us as a reader in like 2010 something, 2018, 2019, whatever, saying things like, well, that's how the time, remember how that was back in the time. And it makes it easier for people who are not very familiar with the time that they are reading a piece in to understand the culture and the societal norms from that time. In the end, it did get a little on my nerves, to be honest. Overall, I did like the plot a lot. I liked how the plot played out because it was quite unexpected, and I thoroughly enjoyed this. So total recommendation. I finished More Than This a couple of days ago, and I really had to kind of let it sit a little. I am a little bit torn about this book. Overall, I really did enjoy it, and I would recommend it to anybody who wants like a deeper read in a way. The first half was really tough because I was struggling because nothing happened. It just felt lonely and creepy. The writing style was amazingly portraying this, and I love how the writing style changed according to like how the mood changed. So the author did that really well, but the first half was just so I was getting bored because nothing was happening. I'm a very plot-driven person, so I was ready for something to happen. And then things did happen. It was getting interesting, but it wasn't getting interesting enough. But overall, then in the last like fourth, a lot of things still happen, and I am so satisfied with the message of the book. I am so satisfied with the answers that we got. I'm a little bit unsatisfied with the answers that are still open because there's still a lot of unanswered stuff, which is probably good because it makes you think, and that's kind of what this book probably wants to do. But I was so ready for answers. So if you don't know what this is about, this is basically about a boy who dies and who wakes up after death and is pretty much alone and doesn't know what's happening because he still continues to exist. And this book pretty much is questioning the existence, and you could even say like a lot of basic existential questions is this book throwing up. And there's starts to be hope, and kind of I feel like a big part of the message is that not everything is as it seems. You should question things, and you shouldn't act too quickly because there might always be hope. So overall, if you like somebody with a nice writing style, if you like this type of book, I can totally recommend it. I just finished Two Can Keep a Secret, and I am stunned by the end. The whole book is kind of fluffy, easy reading. This like murder mystery, YA, high school kind of thing. And it reads so easily. It's so like, it just flows. I read it pretty much in one sitting, and it's just really nice. And I was wondering throughout the book like what kind of rating I wanted to give it, because it didn't feel like a 4 or a 5-star rating, because I did like the characters, I did like the relationships, but nothing was really gripping, and nothing was really like totally like creating this intense tension that I like in a murder mystery. But then the ending and how it all played out totally bumped it up by a star to a 4 out of 5-star rating, because I did not see it coming. It wasn't like this big twisty thingy. It might be depending on how you look at things, but it wasn't like, ooh, shocker twist and nothing is as it seems. But still, I couldn't have guessed this ending at all. And I like how things played out because it made sense. The relationship with the police was realistic. What the police was saying was realistic. The way that our heroine is piecing things together and being like the teenage detective is actually being realistic, because it's not that this like 17-year-old is so much better at police work than the police is, and the police isn't just like painted as these dumb people, and how like it all tied together in the end is just a really good story. So if you like a fluffy soft murder mystery, then this totally is for you. So I finished Cress and I'm so glad I did. This story is getting better and better and better, and I'm liking it so much more with every book that comes out, it seems. I like all the characters. I like that this is a sci-fi fantasy that has a new take on fairy tales, and it isn't written too like futuristic sci-fi. It seems like it's a very realistic sci-fi. The way it's written, it feels like it's today, but then it's talking about the world, and it's like futuristic in a way that it doesn't feel really dystopian. It doesn't feel overly technology futuristic, but then there's cyborgs and androids, and then it does. And it's a perfect mix. And Marissa Meyer just draws me into her world, and I can't, like, I don't want to put these down. And if you haven't picked them up yet, what are you doing with your life? Like, pick them up. So I am so ready to go to bed, but I couldn't before this was done. Oh my gosh, this is such a 5 out of 5 star reading for me. Was it like perfect? By far not, no. But there was so much in it that just screamed out of my soul that this is yes, that this became a 5 out of 5 star. There were a few things where I was like, okay, this doesn't make total sense, and I totally get that the plot isn't that original. So we have this like fallen heir who is being tortured and who's trying to rise to bring her country back to her people. We have some magic in there, we have some allies, we have some enemies, we have a love triangle, and so it's very unoriginal at that point. What makes this so super special, that I love this, is the inner dialogue of our main character. She is so torn, and she is so consumed by her wish to be free and to free her people, and what she has been taught and what she's been through. And she is like, this is character development that I love so much. We actually see her develop. It's not like there's one thing happening and the next day she did a 180. So she is developing, and she's torn, and she's like, there's battles inside of her, and she is selfish at times, but she tries to then at other times she puts herself after her people and what she can and cannot do and what she wants to do or not. And she's battling with all her relationships, and it's just, this is done so beautifully. And halfway through I felt like this would be the perfect way to have a villain becoming a villain backstory. This is how it should be done, because we learn how she fosters on her anger, how she is being tortured, and how she develops into a stronger person, but a stronger person who does make ruthless decisions, and who's constantly battling between her empathy, her conscience, and what needs to be done. And that is just done so amazingly. And there's like, oh, that is just so beautiful. And I wish there's a couple of books that were like advertised as morally gray or advertised as being villainy, and they weren't at all compared to this. This just had so much of these feelings in it. If you're not a person who likes that kind of stuff, I totally understand if this might not be for you, because as I said, the plot isn't the most original. It's just the way it's done. It's the first time I have read it in this beautiful way. If you know more books that have done like this inner battle between what is a good choice and what is not a good choice, about what needs to be done and what would be morally the right thing to do, with characters who aren't goody good shoes, like who only do decide like morally perfect. And if you have like any recommendations for me that in some way compared to this, please let me know. I want to read more, and I have to look into the author, Laura Sebastian. I don't think I have seen anything else from her, so I have to look into her, and I can't wait for the sequel. Oh, that was so good. This is definitely going up on my favorite shelf, which is, you can even see it in the back there. These are the only books that I'm keeping. Okay, right now you can see even more books back there, but this is only like cooking books and travel books, so they don't really count. But up there, these are the only books that I allow myself to keep, and this is going up there.